morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to talk about something that's a little bit weird. Put simply, there are a bunch of missing cards. A bunch of cards which we should have had, and we're expecting to have, and by now we should have had, but we don't actually have them. And that's a little bit weird and confusing. So let's start off with a card that we are actually extremely likely to get, and that is Graphite EX. Now, we are going to move on in a moment to talk about cards which we actually might legitimately never get. And that's a little bit sad. So let's start off with something a little more cheery. And that is Graphite EX. You see, this was actually part of a Korokoro comic art competition. There was a whole thing, and eventually it ended with Graphite EX. And the way they actually ended up doing it was when you bought the comic, you'd get yourself a Shroodle. And then there was a little thing in the comic, a little receipt or token or ticket or whatever you want to call it. And you would take that into a store and you would swap it for Graphite EX. And I don't like making these videos, frankly, because I'm pretty sure I got this comic before I went to Japan for Worlds, and it was still within the time frame I could have got the Graphite EX, but I didn't take my ticket and exchange it, and that seems stupid. So I've got the Shroodle, don't have the Graphite. It's a Japanese promo I'm missing, which is very sad, so that's one that I need to go picking up sooner rather than later. But we end up with this Graphite EX, and look, this is not a particularly phenomenal card, alright? It's not. I mean, I can translate it right now. It's single energy, 30 damage, flip a coin if heads paralysis. Decent attack, especially with a coin flip for paralysis, but we want that on a basic, not on a stage 1. And then free energy, 180 plus poison, and then you can't use this attack during your next turn. Well, that's all kind of irrelevant. It's basically free colorless energy, 180 plus poison, which isn't bad. It's fine. But it is just fine. It's not good. It's just fine. Incidentally, this is the card we probably are going to get, and it's fine, whereas the other two cards could potentially be very good under the right circumstances, and they're the ones we're just never getting, and that's really annoying. But we'll get there in a minute, alright? So this Graphite, it came around with the August 2023 Korokoro comic, although by now you know the deal, right? When we say August 2023, it's not actually released in August 2023. It was actually released in mid-July, officially released on the 14th of July. So that was like 4 months ago. And this card is still missing. And the thing is, we've had a bunch of random Japanese promos that have just kind of made their way into sets. The Pikachu EX that featured in the Pikachu EX deck over in Japan, well, they just whacked it into Paldea Evolved. Job's a good one. We had a couple of other EX decks featuring Skeledirge and Mewtwo, and they just got popped into Paradox Rift. Just came out. Nice and easy. So, we can do this. Like, we get these promos coming around all the time. And sometimes it's in sets, sometimes it's in their own boxes. Think Cyclizar. Although, to be fair, the ones that get their own boxes tend to be promos that come around in like gym promo pads, etc. in Japan. They don't tend to be random promos like this. That's not to say they can't be, but it is to say that's generally not the way Pokemon tend to do it. They are, of course, free to do as they like. I'm not in charge, shockingly. But it's just, if we look at the trend, that's generally the way it tends to go. So, I do think we're going to get this one at some point. I do think absolutely that it's coming. It's just, that came out before Skeledirge and Mewtwo. They came out on the 22nd of September. Not the middle of July. And yet we've already got them. And that's why it's a little bit weird to me. And I know sometimes random promos do take a little bit longer to come through, and that's probably what's happening here. These are just random promos that are taking a little bit longer to come through than they usually would. But that is something I've got my eye on. The other cards, however, are cards that I do think are missing, and probably we're never going to get them at this point. And this is one of those situations I would love to be wrong, but these are from the last Sword and Shield promo pack. And that was a while back at this stage. And I think we've probably gotten to the point here where if we were going to get them, I mean, forgive me for saying this, we would have got them. Like, generally speaking, every time there's a main set in Japan, there's a gym promo pack. So the penultimate one for Sword and Shield was the one that came around with Lost Abyss, Our Lost Origin, and it was the one that featured Kyogre V. Because remember, back then we were talking about Pokemon Vs. And what happened with Kyogre V? Obviously, we got Kyogre V. We got all the cards in this promo pack. Generally speaking, as you can see on the little thing here, you generally tend to get a Pokemon V or EX, a trainer card, another new card, and a few reprints. And Kyogre got chucked into Crown Zenith. Jobs are good and move on with your life. So explain Quagsire V to me. Quagsire V came around in the final pack, and as it stands at the moment, just gone. It's just completely missing. We don't have it. There's no sign of it. And here's the point, and this is very, very important. It's probably too late at this point. And the reason is this is a Sword and Shield card. It's a V in a world of EXs, and it's been a long time, and it's got a different border and card design. Like, we change card designs when we change blocks. And, yeah. We never got this in Sword and Shield. Like, this should have been in Crown Zenith. But it wasn't in Crown Zenith. So we're just kind of sitting there being like, okay, now what? And at this stage, I think there is a genuine, very real chance this Quagsire never comes around at all. Which is really bad. Like, it's not an amazing card, but it's decent. The ability says that this Pokemon is not affected by effects of your opponent's attacks. And for free energy, 100 damage, but if you've got any fighting energy on, it does 220. And I'm not claiming this is some kind of phenomenal broken card, not for a second. But I am saying, imagine this in a Baxcalibur deck. One random fighting energy, doesn't even have to be a fighting energy, honestly, just anything that counts as a fighting energy, and now all of a sudden you're hitting 220, which is the magic number to KO Pokemon Vs. And you've got 220 HP and an ability that gives you that little bit of protection I mentioned. So actually, again, not claiming for a second that this is an amazing game-breaking card and that our format is forever altered for not having it. Japan has this card, and it's not really seeing any real play or success. That's not my point. My point is that it is potentially a playable card. That if you're ending up playing Fighting Energy in Baxcalibur for whatever reason, this becomes a really good tech. Or it becomes a really good tech and gives you an excuse to play Fighting Energy. But regardless, this is potentially relevant. Now, there's also an Aerodactyl from the same pack. Lovely artwork, incidentally, not a brilliant card. Just for single energy, you do 50 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. And for 2 energy, you do 120 and discard an energy from this Pokemon. It's fine. But again, it's a card that we don't have. Honestly, the biggest one here, the most relevant one, is probably Peaceful Park. Now, firstly, I really adore the artwork on this card. But more importantly, it basically says both players' Pokemon cannot be confused, and if they are confused, they recover. So if they're confused and you play this and then unconfused. And again, right now, this is not a very relevant card. This is not a good card. This is not a card that's really seeing any play. What it is a card that could. If we ever end up in a format where confusion ends up playing a part, where there are really good Pokemon that confuse, where confusion becomes a decent part of the metagame, where confusion becomes something for which you have to be teching, this is the tech. This is what you play to get around confusion. If you're in Japan. If you're not in Japan, and you don't have access to this card, yeah, you don't play this, because you don't have this. This card doesn't exist. And that is my point here. My point has never been, oh, this is an amazing card, and it's crushing in Japan, and we don't have it. No. My point is that there is a world where these cards actually do become good and do become relevant, and we do need them, and if we reach that point, yeah, it's too late, we don't have them. Like I said, Graphii, it's only been about 4 months, and although we've had a bunch of other promos that came around at the same time or later, at some point we'll get this. Maybe it's going to end up in our version of Shiny Treasures EX, which actually, to be fair, is probably the most likely way we get this. Or somewhere other way, but it's still a Scarlet and Violet card. It's not been that long. We're probably going to get it at some point. But Quagsire, Aerodactyl, and Peaceful Park, because they were all in that, they were the 3 new cards that weren't alternate art reprints that came around in that pack. I don't know if we're ever going to get them. Because it's not just the fact that it's been a long time. We've essentially had 4 main sets since. It's been like a year. It's also the fact that they are Sword and Shield cards, and I know that we sometimes do get previous block cards. That does happen. That is possible. Think back to the gold tag teams that we got from Sun and Moon during Sword and Shield. Although, to be fair, even then, we didn't get all of them. We just got kind of like a couple of random ones. But as a general rule, this doesn't happen. This is not how it works, and that is weird. Right, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you need to know, and now it's over to you guys. Do you miss these cards? Do you want these cards? Do you care? Do you think we're getting them? How do you think we're getting them? Anything else you want to tell me in the comment section? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and card games and Pokemon card games, all kinds of fun things. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And of course, get shoutouts on the channel, like the lovely Tamberlin, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and is a very lovely person, so shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far, the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.